My next guest was reading a layoff email one week and soon found herself standing inside her own coffee stand. Her brand mantra is allergic to flop, which is exactly the energy I need in my life right now. This conversation is about what it actually takes to bet on yourself in the middle of a layoff, in your 30s, with a partner footing more of the bill than either of you planned. It is honest, it is real, and I think it's going to land. Hi, I'm Jen Fast, and this is The Comeback Show. Every episode, I sit down with a woman in the middle of doing the brave thing. Some of them have just walked out of a corporate job they outgrew. Some of them are betting on a weird idea. Some of them are figuring it out as they go. Most of them are doing all three. Today, I have Bree Broadwater with me. Bree is the founder of Noli Coffee in Bothell, Washington, the home of the salted maple cold brew, and she is building it in public, one TikTok at a time. Bree, welcome.
Hi, happy to be here.
Let's get into your story because my listeners can always tell when someone is speaking from a place of lived experience. For the listeners who have not found Noli yet, walk us through the 30-second version. Where is it? What is it? And what should they order?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Noli Coffee is in Bothell, Washington, off the 522 on Woodinville Drive. We are a small coffee stand, but we have big dreams, and I think we have the potential of being a really incredible business. What I suggest you guys order, it kind of depends. There's two things I would probably suggest. I love the salted maple cold brew, of course. That is like one of my favorites, and I kind of named it after myself, which is a little ridiculous, but it is quite good. And then I also really love a cafe Noli, which is a dark chocolate salted caramel iced latte. And then the thing that I think has gone like semi-viral on TikTok and stuff is kind of our espresso sodas. So the most popular one these days is a Diet Cherry Coke Espresso, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's cherry syrup, Diet Coke, espresso, and a splash of cream.
Yum. I've heard of the Diet Coke Cherry Espresso, and I love Diet Coke, I love Cherry Coke, and so that's going to be the first thing I order when I get there. What does a typical day look like for you right now? What time are you up, and what are you doing most of the day?
That's a great question. So we are open 5 days a week right now because I am the only employee. So I have strategically decided to only be open 5 days a week because I just know myself and my energy levels. I will get burnt out quite quickly if I try to push myself to 6-7 days a week. I just can't do it. So what my days typically look like now on a day where the stand is open is a 4:45 wake-up call. I rush through my morning routines, brush my teeth, do my skincare. I try to put on a little bit of makeup and then an outfit that is okay getting dirty, because I do get quite dirty throughout the day, but also something that's sort of cute so I can film when there's downtime in the stand itself. And then I head out to Bothell. It takes me about 30 minutes to get there. I get there around 6 o'clock, and that gives me enough time to let the espresso machine warm up, do all of the prep work that I need to do that day, finish anything that was lingering from the day before. And then my day really gets started at 6:30 with customers. And then throughout that day, if there's a lull in business, I'm stopping to answer emails, reach out to people, do inventory, work on marketing, work on any sort of content that needs to be filmed, partnerships, private events. So literally all of it. On my days off, the only real day off I feel like I actually take is Sunday, where I really try to just disconnect and do me the whole day, get my nails done, take a nap, watch a show, be with my husband and my dog as much as possible. And then Monday, since my husband's back to work, I'm pretty much always back to work, just working on any sort of admin stuff that didn't get done already in the week, trying to plan for the week ahead, deal with any fires that need to be put out right away. That's kind of what it's been since we opened.
I'm glad to hear you get at least one day off to rest and recoup, because the last thing you want to do is burn out when you're the only employee, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I would like to back all the way up, because one of the things I loved about finding your TikTok is how honest you've been about why this started and how. So take us there. Take us to the moment right before everything changed, before the layoff. What was your life like?
Yeah, so I was actually laid off twice, once in 2024, once in 2025. The first time was from my longtime employer, Salesforce, where I had been several years. And then before that, I was at Tableau, which is an acquisition that they did. And through that, my role changed a number of times, right? I was hired to do one thing, and then with an acquisition, I was bumped into something else, completely different department, blah, blah, blah. Like, probably had 8 or 9 managers over the span of 4 years, which, I know that there's a lot of restructuring that happens in tech, but even in tech, that's kind of an insane amount. That week of that particular layoff was challenging. It was just beyond challenging, actually. It was like I was supposed to go wedding dress shopping with my mom and my best friend, which I had to cancel and fly down to LA last minute because my dad was having emergency double bypass surgery. And I spent, 4 or 5 days just taking care of him in the ICU, trying to get him back on his feet and get all of the meds figured out and all of the food situation and who's going to help take care of him because I couldn't stay very long. And then on my last day there, I got the dreaded 15-minute meeting dropped on my calendar with my skip level manager, and it was just kind of the unceremonious bye. And so, it was tough. I would say it didn't feel great in the moment, but I think I had been in a place where I was already dealing with so much, and I was really thinking about how short life really is and how, what are we really here for if we can't be there for our families and be there to take care of them. So in a way, it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I was able to have a nice severance, nest egg. I had 6 months of unemployment. I was feeling pretty okay about it at the time. And then through the next year, between the first time I got laid off and the second time, I took some time off, really just focused on myself and figuring out what I wanted to do. It didn't exactly take at that time. I took a short contract at Amazon just to dip my toes in there, and very quickly got out because it definitely is not for me. And then I took a short contract at another tech company where I just think it was a really bad fit, and it was supposed to be a year-long thing, and they kind of severed ties after a few months. And that was the one that really stung so much that I just was like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. You can't pay me to go back to this type of work. It just was sucking the life out of me, and just thinking about how much time and energy I'd poured into this role and how little I got back out of it just left a really bad taste in my mouth. And I thought, just you know what, if I don't bet on myself, who else is going to bet on me? So that's sort of where Noli came from.
Unfortunately, so many of our colleagues, because we're both in the Seattle area, have had the same experience. I've been laid off twice myself. I also worked for tech companies. But in my last role, I actually worked in HR, and I was one of them who was not laid off. I survived several rounds, and the survivor's guilt from that was also pretty rough to deal with. Your pinned video, and one of your most popular videos on your TikTok, is called Saving Ourselves from Destitution. You tell us the story behind that one.
Yeah, that's a really strong tag, isn't it? So basically, I opened up week 1 of my business. We were doing, our very first day we opened, all my friends and family came out and really supported us. It was a huge day in terms of sales. And then later that week, I had a day where I sold 1 cup of coffee. And it was super disheartening. I was excuse my language, I was oh shit, this had better work. I got to figure something else out. So I turned to social media. When I had started the business, I really kind of thought, I don't have to be the face of the business. I can do everything without putting my face in there. They don't even need to know it's me. And then I just kind of got real with myself, and I was look, I like to talk. I'm just going to have to put myself out there and see if my personality resonates with the people locally in this community, and just do what I can. And some really great advice I got from another business person was just take every opportunity you can to tell people about your business, especially in the first couple of years, so that people just know you exist. And so I really took that to heart. Saving ourselves from destitution is a little bit of it's not exactly accurate. I don't think if this business fails, we'll be going destitute. It's more just embarrassing, I'd say. And probably really frustrating if that ends up happening, disappointing, all of those things. I can't lie, the financial component is really important, and really making sure that I can provide for myself and my family is just a huge deal. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all just trying to do. So it's just figuring out how to get there.
Well, even though I wasn't laid off from my corporate job, I did leave it suddenly with no plan. Actually, just about 9 months ago, I had kind of a last straw moment at the office in which I realized I do not want to do this anymore.
Right.
And so I just left with no plan. But I also had the panic moments of, oh my gosh, are we going to starve now? Because I was making six figures and I was relying on bonuses and stock grants and all that good stuff.
Yes.
Very fortunate that my husband's business is doing very well and that he very much wanted me to be able to stay at home and take care of myself and our family for the first time in my entire career.
Totally.
But had a few moments of like worrying about the destitution thing, especially when he got injured a month ago in an accident at home and ended up getting 2 spinal surgeries.
Oh, wow, serious.
Don't know how long before he can go back out. He's a roofer, and so his spine's a little important to that. Yeah. But I had a moment when he was still recovering when I looked at him and said, do you need me to go and get another job? Because I will do that if you need me to. Secretly dreading the idea of, oh my God, having to admit that this didn't work and that I have to work. But he immediately told me, no, please don't do that. We will figure the money out. Like, your stress and your health and our family is much more important. And so I think we're both very fortunate to have spouses who are so supportive.
Oh, yes.
Somewhere between getting laid off and then standing in a drive-through window pulling shots, there's got to be this insane logistical mountain of things that does not get talked about enough. I'd love to live in that messy space for a few minutes. Tell me, why coffee? Why a drive-through?
It's kind of a long story, so I'll try to give you the cliff notes. I've always loved coffee. I've always been a coffee person. It's been a hobby for a long time. I was also the girl in college who literally went and got coffee every single day, which wasn't a great financial decision. I probably should have been making my own coffee at home, but it was just like a treat for myself. And I love coffee culture. I love going to a cafe. I love chatting with a barista. I love a beautiful pastry. I love the art of espresso. There's just so much in that experience that I think is so beautiful. There's so much hospitality that goes into running a great coffee business. So it's just always been an interest to me. Why now? I'll be honest, I saw a couple of creators who really just were embodying this life that I wanted to live. And I was looking at them and I was like, these girls are capable, they're smart, they're not, much younger or much older than me. Like, if they can do it, I think I can do it. And so I really was able to see an example that was really successful. And I was like, I can do that. Like, it's doable, it's feasible, it's reasonable. I'm going to go for it. And that's pretty much it. I don't know. It was like where my passion sort of met my ambition. So that just kind of worked out for me. I will say I had a question I've had for you is, were you really into podcasts before you started the podcast? Because I sort of think no matter what you do, no matter what your passion is, the second you sort of turn it into your job, it changes your relationship to it a lot. So my relationship to going and getting coffee has changed quite a bit. I'm much more critical of menus and pricing and what machine are they using and how are they, like, all of these like little nuanced details that maybe at the start of my, enjoyment of these things wasn't there. And so, yeah, I would just be curious to see, like, were you a big podcast person before you started this?
That is a great question. I was not. I had no intention of starting a podcast, and somehow I ended up with 3. Actually, I know how it happened. I actually was kind of an early adopter of social media 11 years ago. I think I started with Instagram and Facebook and all of those. And I always just did it for me personally, for lifestyle and for reconnecting with friends, and just slowly grew an audience. And it wasn't until probably a year ago, still in my corporate job, when I realized I feel like I need a backup plan or an exit plan. Mm-hmm. Maybe I already knew that I didn't belong there. What if I took this more seriously and more intentionally? Mm-hmm. And like you, I saw other creators, especially on YouTube, that were starting to talk about how they built their following and how they monetized it. And that was the lifestyle I wanted very much. So very similarly. So I just started working on it. And then I think that was part of the reason that I was able to leave when I wanted to, is I already had a comfort level with being online, and I already had started offering some coaching and some mentoring to people, and started kind of creating digital products and solutions for the women that I serve. The podcast was more of I'm curious about it. I started listening to them myself, going on walks for my health, and then I think one day it hit me as I was walking that this is a different experience than regular social media. I have given them my full undivided attention for as long as I'm on here. I can't swipe away. I'm not distracted. I am immersed in this person's world. And now I feel like I have this sort of relationship with this person I've never met. And I wanted that for my listeners and for my business. And so I just started looking into, like, what would it take? Like, you know, because I didn't want to invest a lot of money in equipment or whatever. And I knew that there's got to be some good platforms out there that even a beginner could use. And I picked one up and just started playing with it and realized I could probably do this. So I did a couple of tests, solo episodes, just myself, and loved the process. Those first episodes took me forever, and I don't know that the quality was very good. But after that, my ADHD brain did not allow me to focus on only one thing, so I started another one having to do with a completely different subject. Luckily, when I left my corporate job and started focusing on this business, I realized I had to really lock in, focus in on one thing. So I closed the other two podcasts and started the Comeback Show. And I feel like what's funny is, although I had no intention of starting a podcast when I started, it has now become the favorite part of my business. And I think it's just because I get to have conversations like these with women who are absolutely inspiring and out there doing the thing. And they're all doing it in such different ways. And I don't think most of them realize just how inspiring their stories are. And so I feel like I've always been a storyteller at heart. If I can help bring their story out and introduce them to a whole new audience, that's just been my favorite thing.
I love that. I think this, like, as social media and the phone gets more and more attached to our hand, finding things that you can truly give your full attention to and not feel distracted by is such a, like, gift in a way. So I love podcasts for that reason. I'm a total podcast head. I listen to different podcasts every day. I have, like, a whole schedule and everything. But I love that. And I think you do get very parasocial with podcasters because it's almost like it's taken over late night, like, TV. You know, like, I think the whole country used to sit down at night and watch, you know, the Ed Sullivan Show or whomever, like, Fallon or whatever, but we don't do that anymore. There's a million choices on TV. But a podcast, you can find the niche of the thing that you love. So if you love interviews, if you love true crime, if you love weird historical facts and people who are willing to talk to you for an hour about medieval, like, you can really find all of this access to so much information, and you get exposed to some of, like, the most fun personalities out there. So I think podcasting is just, like, the most fun format.
I'm so glad you said yes to being on a podcast as well.
Course.
Now, I wanted to ask you, when you first, like, decided, okay, I'm going to do this coffee stand. Of course, there's a million decisions to be made, but what was, like, the very first thing you had to decide?
If I was going to be mobile or drive-through, or if I was going to go traditional cafe, a few things came down into that decision being made. Mobile gives you a lot more flexibility, but it's also more challenging figuring out where you're going to pop up, and it means you're having to do a lot of hustling and reaching out to people and, like, you know, really building relationships in that way. It's also a much more, like, physically taxing sort of gig because, you know, if you're hauling a trailer behind a car, you have to, like, you know, jack up the trailer, and there's a lot of, like, getting their generator set up and making sure that any equipment that was jostled in transportation is secure and all of that. So I was considering doing mobile, but I think there's the physical requirements and sort of where I'm at with my, like, physicality and stuff. Like, I just wasn't really ready to take on that particular challenge. And then a cafe, like a traditional cafe, which I think is, you know, still potentially, like, one of my goals ultimately is to open a, you know, brick and mortar, but it's so much more overhead. Most cafes that open, within the first year close their doors. So I think the risk is a lot higher there. And just the amount of equipment that you kind of have to like the amount of capital truly that you would need to open something like that without having any other prior small business ownership experience, I just thought was like a much harder sell. So I actually found the listing for my business on Craigslist. I was researching equipment, I was researching trailers, I was trying to see what was out there. And I saw this $10,000 coffee stand that was for sale. And I went down there the next day, just showed up, met the owner, ended up meeting the owner of the actual property who also works on the lot. And yeah, I was like, I'm interested. I want to go for it.
That's already so much stuff that I had no idea that you would have to take into consideration. The stuff that I would be aware of is like, okay, money and location, equipment, permits. Which of the decisions you had to make was the hardest to figure out?
Oh, that's a good question. I knew financially I didn't want to take a huge risk, so I didn't borrow any money to open this business. This was all self-funded via like selling some old stocks that I had in a company, personal savings, wedding gift money that my husband and I got at our wedding. So for that, I'm really grateful I didn't have to take out any loans, and I've been able to get to where I'm at without having to borrow any cash. But that was kind of a big decision to try to figure out how I was going to do it. I would say the location and the actual stand itself was a hard decision to make. I think the old stand didn't have a lot of business, and I think that was because of a few reasons. One, I don't think they were serving a very high quality product. Two, I don't think the owner was particularly into espresso culture or serving something that I feel like she was particularly proud of. So I think because of all of those things, that's why she wasn't really seeing traffic. It's on a super busy street, but I think after I opened the business and I sort of figured out, okay, like what's really challenging about it is that it is on like a tight curve. People are going very fast and you have to turn kind of quickly into our lot to get to our line. To answer your question, it was a difficult decision to go forward with this, but it was such an incredible deal, what they were offering, that I was like, okay, even if this is a challenging location, I think we can find a way to work with it, get it sort of where it needs to be, and then if in a year's time we're still feeling really good, we can always move locations. So that's kind of what my thought process was with selecting this particular stand. I'll also say there's just not a lot of stands for lease or sale generally in the area. I think people who are building them are keeping them, or they're giving them to employees who have worked there a long time. So just the actual like inventory of options is pretty low for drive-through coffee stands.
What about the people in your life when they found out that you were going to do this? Were they supportive, or did they think you were crazy?
Most people were really supportive. I think, I love a naysayer. Tell me I can't do something, I'm going to go do it. There's actually even a guy that works on the property who, as we were cleaning it out from the previous owner, he's like, the previous owner said that they'd never rent this to a coffee stand again because of how difficult of a location it is. And I was just like, well, why would you tell me that? I'm already signed the paperwork. I'm here. I'm doing it. Like, why would you say anything? And I was just like, I love proving men wrong. Like, just thank you for that comment, because when I'm successful and this thing blows up and we're doing great, I'm going to think back on this moment. So the people in my personal life have been super supportive. My husband's been incredibly supportive. I think he really just knew how miserable I was at corporate. Corporate was an interesting, like, I'm bored and burnt out somehow, I'm over it and I'm stressed. And like all of these multitudes of just truly being unsatisfied in this type of job. I think he was just really happy that I had found something or some passion for something and was ready to just commit to it.
I think when people in our life who are supposed to be supportive sometimes aren't, because they are worried about the financial realities of owning or starting a business. So that's something that maybe we should talk about a little bit more. the fact that even if your business is profitable, you're usually not at what you were making before in corporate life. And someone in your life, like your husband, usually has to carry more than they signed up for. So what does like that gap look like? How does that affect your life right now?
I would say we both are just grinding really hard. My husband's a mortgage lender, so he's 100% commission based. So he is working very, very hard to support us, and I'm working very, very hard to build a future for us. And I think we're both aligned that this is a long-term strategy of how we want to build our lives together. I think we both love entrepreneurship, and the fact that I have the ability to start my own business and work on it and grow it and foster it as a means to potentially retire is kind of the strategy. And he gets to kind of have that more traditional 9-to-5 experience, even though, you know, he, as a mortgage lender, he kind of is his own boss. He sort of runs his own business within the business. So in some ways we are on similar journeys. There is no guaranteed money on his end, and there's no guaranteed money on our end, but he's just been in his business a lot longer, so he's much more established.
Has your relationship taken on any strain because of this? Or what is the hardest part of running your own business every day?
I think the hardest part about running your own business every day, I mean, the financial component is really tough. I mean, I love to travel. I love to take a beautiful vacation. I love to go places. I haven't really done much of that this year. You know, last year we got to take a ton of different vacations, and we got married, and it was just this beautiful year of travel and leisure, and I loved it. And this year has been a really big year for work and, you know, grinding. So I will say that has definitely taken a big hit. In terms of our relationship and any challenges there, I'm really lucky that I have, I think, one of the best partners you can have. He's just incredibly supportive, and I think he's really upfront about, you know, doing like financial reviews, like where are we at this month? What do we have coming in? And it's been an interesting transition because we got married in September, so we're like 6 months in, and sort of that like blending of finances in a real way, so it's less yours and mine and more us now. That has been a little bit of like growing pains, but not anything too serious. I feel like on the big things we're pretty aligned, and all of the like values and plans for the future were pretty aligned. I've just been really lucky, and my mom always said, you know, it's going to be one of the most important decisions of your life who you end up wanting to spend your life with. And it's so true. Like, love is so important, but all these other things are just as important. And someone who wants the same things as you is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as someone who's been married 3 times in her 52 years, I consider myself somewhat of an expert on marriage. But as you know, luckily, my husband is also as supportive, and he has had to foot the bills for our finances as I'm getting things ramped up too. What was funny for me leaving a corporate job, though, is I just realized this in being interviewed by a financial reporter on what it's like to leave or retire early. It's just how much money you save by not working a corporate job. We actually crunched the numbers, and we figured out that our family actually saves $53,000 this first year just from the lifestyle shrinkage and cutting out extra expenses, not having to commute, pay for parking, pay for bridge tolls, pay for gas, corporate wardrobe, you know, convenience foods, like ordering dinner because I'm way too tired to cook at 6 p.m., you know, working a corporate job, and having to buy lunch and breakfast out because I didn't have the time or remember to bring them to the office with me. I think when people think about leaving a corporate job, they focus so much on what salary they're losing that they forget how much having that job costs them. So and we're both so lucky to have supportive spouses. I know not all women have that, though. So one thing I would ask you is, for someone who is staring kind of at the same leap that each of us took and wondering if they can do it and they don't have a partner with a steady income, what would we tell them? What would you tell them?
I would say figure out what sort of funding options are available to you. If you have great credit, if you've got other experience running small business, if you can work with somebody to come up with a great business plan to get an SBA loan or even a loan from a bank. Like, I think that there are a lot of options out there. You definitely don't have to go the route I took. It was just, for me, I had already had enough debt in my life that I was really trying to just bootstrap everything that I was doing in this business. But I'll be honest, like, I'm at the point where I probably do need to start borrowing some money to make some real improvements and really grow to the rate that I want to grow, and like just some operational stuff that needs to be taken care of. So I guess I would say don't be afraid of borrowing money, just be thoughtful. I would say lean on the people that can be supportive to you. You know, if you have parents that are supportive and like live in the area, I wouldn't be above moving home for 6 months as you're trying to grow a business and trying to save money and cut costs and really go all in on your goals. And I think supportive families will understand that and want to be there for you as well. And if neither of those are options, I would say like the third thing is just really have a longer runway. I know it sucks to, be in a dead-end job that you hate, but if you can see the light at the end of the tunnel with a plan and you can start working on your business at night, just like an hour after you get off work, after you've had dinner, and you can, get the bones in the business plan there, the small version, the pop-up version, if, coffee's something you're interested, try doing that, or try figuring out how to get to a farmer's market, or if you want to go e-commerce, you can totally run e-commerce as a second job. It doesn't have to be your full-time thing. So I would say find a way to just make it your second thing, your side gig, and then grow your side gig big enough so that you can leave your lame corporate.
Thank you for talking about that practical but important financial stuff with me, because I think if a woman is like just watching highlight reels of someone's business being built on Instagram, they usually skip over this messy stuff and they have no idea what they're getting into. So thank you.
100%. I was even talking to a girlfriend about this, and I was like, yeah, it's been really hard. It's really challenging. And she's like, well, watching your Instagrams and your TikToks seems like it's going great. I'm like, well, good. I'm glad you're picking up on that. But, it's not always rainbows and butterflies.
Switching gears a little bit, you are about to turn 32. I am 52. So we're technically a generation apart, but I think that gap is actually one of the more interesting things about our conversation today. We are both doing the brave thing, but in two completely different decades or seasons of our life. What do you think is easier about starting something now in your 30s than you imagine it would have been if someone was trying to do this 20 years ago?
I just think there's a million more resources out there. I think you can find, everybody has a YouTube channel, everybody's trying to sell a course, everybody's trying to teach you how to do something, and I think that's almost a double-edged sword, because yes, there's so much out there, but who do you listen to? Who has got the right advice? Everyone has a different opinion on everything. So it's a little bit of it's great that we have so many resources, and it's also a little challenging to wade through all of the bad advice.
Is there anything that you think is harder about being in your 30s right now than it would have been 20 years ago?
Yes and no. I would say the economic climate right now is really challenging. I think there's a lot of political stuff happening that I think we're all pretty uncomfortable with. 20 years ago was a couple years right before the recession, and that wasn't easy either. So I don't know. I think obviously the economy ebbs and flows, and we all kind of have to roll with the punches as business people and figure out how we're going to pivot if those times come around. Knock on wood that nothing detrimental happens in the next ever, honestly. And there's also obviously social media being huge is an incredible resource for a small business owner. TikTok, you can just show people the handcrafted thing that you like to do in your spare time and be like, look, I sell these on Etsy. You can get 5 million views because people think those are so cool, and they can sell out your business, and you can hire. There's truly so many opportunities. It's just sort of capitalizing on those and knowing how to capitalize on those and understanding what it takes to sort of bottle up virality, using social media as a tool, and understanding how to use it as a tool is a huge bonus to people who are getting started now.
I think that's where being in your 30s might be an advantage for you. Just the technical literacy and the comfort with technology is, as someone who's worked in a tech company before, I think of myself as pretty tech savvy, but there are other people my same age who do not feel the same way at all. And they're really struggling, especially with the advent of AI and feeling like you're being left behind there. Are there any other disadvantages or advantages you can think of either being 30 or 50?
I have just been thinking a lot about the fact that like our grandmothers grew up in a time where they couldn't get a credit card, where I know this is a little like dark, and so forgive me, but like things like marital rape were legal. And it's just to see like how far we've come, that women like us got the opportunity to be in corporate and work our way up and be, you know, the boss, you know, business people that we wanted to be. And we also have the power and the opportunity to say, like, actually, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur and do this, like, kind of badass thing that, you know, 50 to 100 years ago was just sort of unheard of. I feel, like, emotional sometimes. I'm just, like, I feel so proud of how far women have come and what we've been able to accomplish within a couple of decades. And I think it's just really cool to see women thrive and get to live the lives that they've always wanted without any restrictions.
I've kind of been thinking about the same thing myself, and I feel like we've come kind of full circle right now with the opportunities for women. Because my grandmother was a farm wife and would never have considered working outside of the home. That was not a thing. Mm-hmm. My mother, who's in her 70s now, did work her butt off in factories and outside of the home to raise us, and we were a two-income household for sure. And I started out that way too, feeling like I had to work. It wasn't a choice for me, like staying at home. No one could afford to do that, you know. But I feel like I finally come full circle in that I've worked for 30 years and done what I've done. So now I have the privilege of staying home finally and taking care of my family while I still have a kid in high school and taking care of my husband and our home. But the fact that I have that privilege really is a full circle moment. At least I have the choice, right? Yes. My grandmother did not have the choice. So,
yeah, I think about that too. My grandmother, she was, during World War II, she was one of the only women who, like, kind of rose to the top as, like, a senior accountant at a chemical company. And when, like, World War II ended and all of the men came back, she lost her job. Because they needed to employ men, and then she kind of just became a housewife, and I think she was deeply unhappy doing that because she was a really, like, hard-working, ambitious woman. Then, you know, my mom, she worked forever, and I think she really would have loved to have been able to stay home with us all of our childhood, and we just didn't have that opportunity. So, again, like, I totally hear you. I think it's giving women the choice to do what they want. If they want to stay home, great. If they want to go out and, you know, run an empire, I think we should all have the opportunity to figure out what exactly it is best for us.
I think as a woman in her 50s, we look at someone starting a business in her 30s, and all we see is the advantages that you might have over us. But I think we forget, too, that we have an advantage in some cases and some things to offer in terms of advice. We have the lived experience, the years. So we have some pattern recognition, some ability to kind of see how things will go or predict how things might happen. I think we have less ego. We've lived long enough to know that no one's really thinking about us, so we shouldn't worry so much about what they think. By now we know what fights are worth fighting for and what battles are not. But there are also still the places where being older is a tax. That tech literacy curve we were talking about, we have less energy for sure. And then if we make a mistake financially, we have fewer years to recoup those finances. So there's a little sense of urgency, too, there.
The other one I thought about was, I think you guys also have more connections. You know, you've had more time to meet people who've become very successful and who can eventually, like, maybe you have a really great friend who can invest in your business or be a great mentor to you. And I don't want any woman, like, listening to this to ever feel like it's too late. It's never too late. When I got started, I'm not kidding, I felt like it was too late for me. I recently went to a meetup of other coffee business owners, and I'm not kidding, they've all been doing this way longer than me. They're all younger than me. I think the youngest was like 23, 24, and her business was on track to do $1 million in revenue. So I hear you. Like, it's really hard as like feeling like the older person in the room, being like comparing yourself to the younger people. But all you just have to think about is like much longer have they been at it. You also have to realize they may have had a lot of help from family or other people in their lives. Not to, denigrate their accomplishments at all, but just realizing that it doesn't happen in a vacuum, and your circumstance is going to be a lot different than hers. They say comparison is the thief of joy. So trying to not let what other people's success looks like impact how you feel about you or your business.
Maybe the antidote to that would be encouraging more generational conversations like these. Like, let's share the wisdom and then understand each other a little bit more rather than making assumptions. There's so much that we can learn. And one thing I've definitely learned at this age that I didn't really understand when I was younger is that when you stop competing with other women, when you like team up and help each other, magic happens. Like, it's super powerful.
I totally agree. I look around at all the other coffee businesses in the area, and I don't really see them as the competition. I see major corporations like Starbucks and Dunkin' to be the competition, right? I'm trying to get people to go local. I'm trying to get people involved in the community or at least feel like they're getting involved in the community by supporting me, which they are, right? Like, I am a local person and I am trying to do this thing. So I do believe that there is space for everybody, even if we are all in a very similar, if not exactly the same sort of business.
So bringing it back to the part of this that I think is so fun, your TikToks, because that is actually how I found you. Some of your stuff just kept hitting my For You feed, and I could not stop watching it. So can you tell us a little bit about Allergic to Flop? Where did that phrase come from, and how's that your philosophy?
Yes, so Allergic to Flop is a hook I just came up with that was honestly just off the dome, off the top of my head, which basically just means I'm like, in TikTok culture, they call it your flop era. It's like when you're failing at something that you thought you were going to do great at. And I was like, I just kind of refuse to let this be my flop era. Like, my corporate life was my flop era. My business life is definitely not that. So I really think that, like, building in public, meaning sharing my lived experience as an entrepreneur online and engaging with people, especially like, part of my strategy is asking for people's opinions. And so people love to give their opinions, and that kind of creates this engagement that people are really like chomping at the bit for, I think, especially in our local communities. Allergic to Flop was born out of my strategy to just sort of bring people along for the ride to what I'm trying to build and like what sort of business I want to be.
One of the things that you've said is that you are looking for other people who are willing to build in public. What is it about that that you're actually looking for and hoping to learn from them?
It's a little bit of a tightrope, because I'm realizing as a business owner, I want to share a lot of information, but then some cards I like to hold a little bit closer to me about, things that I'm really trying to foster. And I don't necessarily need to be putting out into the world just yet, or I'm not ready to like share these publicly or anything like that. And sometimes those are the things that I really want to get in the weeds and like know about what other businesses are doing. Like, how did you put together your employee manual? Like, what does it really look like? What's the structure? And asking questions like that, or like, other entrepreneurs, what do you really look for in a hire in this type of role? What sort of suppliers do you use? There's like all sorts of these things that I think are maybe a little bit like proprietary to each business, and I think everyone's trying to kind of hold their cards a little bit close in that respect, which I totally understand. But I guess I think a really interesting option or potential influencer is like someone who has a really successful coffee business who's just like, I'm going to give you the blueprint of everything that I did and here's how I did it. And I think that someone who's really like confident in their mind and their process and their creativity is willing to do that. But it does sort of take this really like being very, very, very comfortable with where you're at and feeling like that if you give these things away, there's no way that someone could sort of unseat you from your success. I think there are just some things that are proprietary to business owners that they're not real. They're gatekeeping, and I get it.
On the other side of that coin, I think it takes a certain amount of humility to admit that you want to learn from other people and that you don't have all the answers. So I really applaud you for that. That's authenticity right there.
Yeah.
Speaking of authenticity, there is something else that has been on your TikTok that I really want to honor in this conversation because I think it's going to mean a lot to people listening. You've talked openly about being a business person with a disability, and I want you to lead on this one. What do you want to say about that?
I just want to say that, having a disability makes things harder. I can't sugarcoat that. It makes doing, especially like if your disability is physical or mental, it just makes things much harder. Our world isn't really built for people with disabilities. And my attitude has always been, I'm not going to let my disability stop me from achieving the things that I've always wanted to achieve. And I'm just going to have so much more pride in myself and what I've done, knowing that I did it in spite of the fact that, my body isn't working the way it's supposed to. I just respect and awe of people who've been doing and running small businesses for years and years and years. I think it's just so mind-boggling how much work it takes and how hard it is, and to do it when you're in pain or when you're struggling, like mentally or physically. It's just, I don't know. I just have so much respect for people who make that work.
Me too, yes. Is there anything about the way that you've built or designed your business that you've had to design around your body?
If I get employees, which I'm hoping to hire some employees very, very shortly, I would love to be a business where I let people take, a day off for the first day of their period. Like, I think that's beautiful. I think women experiencing menopause should be able to take some medical days to be able to deal with those symptoms. We have sort of this biological pain built in, and it's really hard to focus on being the face of a company and being that customer service, bubbly person when you feel like your insides are being crushed a little bit. So, I'd love to be a place where I can honor that for people. I am unable to do it for myself at this point in time, just because I'm not in a place where I feel comfortable financially just shutting down shop for days at a time. In terms of my personal disability, I'm lucky I have a husband who's really helpful when it comes to lifting really heavy stuff or doing certain tasks for me that might be a little bit more difficult. But I just feel lucky that it's not so drastic that I can't do what I need to do. I'm hopeful that, if my disease progresses, I'm able to be in a position and have the help around me that I can sort of pass things off when needed.
If there's someone out there listening who also has a body that does not always cooperate with them, and they have a dream that they're scared to go after, what would you say to them?
I think I would ask, is what's happening in your body truly preventing you from doing what you want to do? Or is it just a perceived, fear that you won't be able to do it, and making a distinction between those two? For example, I'm never going to be an Olympic gymnast. So to me, that would not be a great, lifelong dream to try to then pursue that. That's just kind of out of the physical wheelhouse of my possibility. But if there was something that I reasonably could do it. There's a difference between real physical limitations and mental limitations that you just put on yourself because of fear or a scarcity mindset, and just trying to have the mental fortitude to really know the difference.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being willing to talk about this stuff and being vulnerable. I'm going to flip it back to something lighter now. Your bio on TikTok says, owner of Noli Coffee, but it also says romance goblin and pastry aficionado and entrepreneur. I love this so much.
Yeah.
What is a romance goblin?
I love to read romance. I love to read fantasy. I love to just read in general. Last year I read over 100 books. This year I'm slightly lower than my average of last year at this time because I've just been so busy. But I've been an avid reader for a very long time. So that is a passion of mine. Maybe I'll write a book one day. Love a good pastry. Will travel for a pastry. Something that I think is really interesting. So you talked about having kind of an ADHD brain and like how you try to do different things. And really this podcast is trying to get women to be sort of fearless and take a leap and do the hard thing. So that's kind of interesting because that's sort of my life motto. I do a hard thing every year. Like I do one really challenging thing every single year. So one year I did stand-up comedy. One year I learned how to DJ and DJ'd my 30th birthday. The next year I got married. I'm calling that my hard thing because that was a huge undertaking. This year I'm opening a business. Next year I might go back to acting school. Like I just sort of feel like I'm not satisfied not trying new things and doing things that scare me. I think you find a lot of growth in doing things that scare you, even if it's learning to do stand-up, like, you know what I mean? Or doing pottery or something. Like, there's so much growth in your personal life and who you are just doing even small things like that. The name Noli comes from the phrase nolite temere, which means have no fear in Latin. So
I had no idea.
Yeah.
How fitting. That's
exactly.
Wonderful.
Very
I love that you're always looking for those growth opportunities and to try new things. And I'm happy to report that not only will not stop as you get older, but as you get older, you're more likely to take more risks and to try new things.
I'll be the most interesting person on the planet by the time I die.
You are already pretty darn interesting. That's wonderful.
Gosh, thanks.
Now, about the pastry thing, is that something that's in the future for Noli Coffee, or what do you see is happening down the road for that business?
Well, we do have pastries right now. We work with a local restaurant, Heritage in Woodinville. They also have a bakery that we get our wholesale baked goods from them, and we pick them up every day fresh. So highly recommend coming by and trying like a ham and cheese croissant or any of our muffins. They're all very good. Eventually, I'd love to kind of expand our food offerings, but that's just kind of where we're at for now. Yes.
Let's make sure that people here in the Seattle area know exactly how to find you. Where's the coffee stand? What are the hours and days?
Yes, we are open Tuesday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. and Saturday 8 to 1. We'll shortly be extending our weekend hours, hopefully in the next month once we hire some additional help. So hopefully be open on Sundays and Saturdays until at least 2 o'clock. We are on the 522 heading towards Kenmore, which I believe is going west. And we are right next to the fitness compound, which is a very large gym that has a very large mural on the side. So a lot of people are probably familiar with seeing that mural. And we are right there. We are drive-through stand. You're also welcome to walk up if you'd like. Either way is fine by me. We are cash-free, just FYI. We are contactless payment. We are really focused on high-quality espresso. So we don't do a ton of like the candy, whipped cream, huge kind of, 36-ounce drinks. That's kind of really not our ethos. I will say, though, we definitely have Red Bulls, Lotus, things like that, energy drinks, because I know those are really popular. But I would say we're kind of an espresso matcha first stand. We use really high-quality espresso from Lighthouse Roasters, which is a local roastery here in Fremont in Seattle. And it's a very, 90s kind of feels like you're stepping into the 90s when you go to Lighthouse. I would love for you guys to come by and say hi and give our coffee a try.
I love the 90s. I love coffee, so I will definitely be by. For our listeners who are not in the Seattle area, I'm sure that they probably now want to follow along in your building and public story. Where can they find you online?
Yes, you can find us at Noli Coffee, both on TikTok and Instagram.
I will have all the links for Noli Coffee in the show notes for anyone who wants to follow along. Couple last questions for you. Mm-hmm. What is the one thing that you would tell yourself from a year ago, knowing what you know now?
Negotiate terms on everything. Just because something's a good deal doesn't mean it can't be an even better deal. Hire sooner rather than later. Get help so that you can focus on the things that will really move the needle in your business, and you won't be working as much in your business, and you can focus more working on your business. Find a mentor. Find somebody who, they don't have to be older than you. They can be younger than you, but just find someone with experience that either you admire or they've been successful in a realm where you're still growing, and they can sort of give you some help, I would also just recommend to anybody who's interested in a mentor checking out SCORE, which is an organization that matches retired people with people who are wanting to be entrepreneurs or are already entrepreneurs. And they, they do it completely for free. They meet with you. They walk you through, any financial questions you may have. They look at financial statements, marketing plans, etc. So I just highly recommend getting a mentor, and that's a great organization to support. And lastly, starting a business should be fun, even though it's kind of scary. If you're not ultimately having fun, you might want to take a second to step back and reassess why you're doing what you're doing.
That is all very good advice. Before I move on to the final question, is there anything you want to ask me?
Do you have any advice for me, growing my business? Is there something that you feel like you've learned in your years working in HR or at other tech companies that you think I could take with me as a manager or as someone who's looking to hire people right now?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things that come to mind. A couple of them that you're already starting to lean into, but I would encourage you to do more. And the first thing is that don't underestimate the power of starting to build your network. I know that when I left my corporate job, I don't think I realized how much of my network was already structurally built in just by the people I'm around every day. And I left thinking I didn't need them. I very quickly learned that although you maybe didn't fit into that crowd, that corporate life, you probably need some sort of tribe around you or network and support. And so finding those people earlier in your business rather than later, the second I started to reach out and collaborate with other women, the more my business accelerated. It was immediate and it was amazing. Yes. And I wish I had done that sooner in the business. And the other thing is that as you're building and as you're hiring, make sure that you are creating systems and processes that are sustainable in the long run.
Yes.
There are always going to be days when you just have to hustle and lock in and work hard, but you don't want that to be every day. So if you don't want to burn out of your own business, make sure that you're creating a sustainable one.
I love that. And I just think on that note, figuring out how to use AI to your benefit. I know we all are really cautious about, kind of AI slop that's kind of getting turned out. And I think that's great. I think we should be really critical of AI art. But systems that AI can help you build and run your business effectively, will 10x your time available to work on the things that you want to work on. So a really big goal for me is to kind of get my AI systems working really well. And luckily my husband loves fiddling around with that. So I have a little bit of a helping hand, but even if you are not super AI literate, just finding someone who's willing to help you get that set up, I think that's a huge unlock for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think that's true no matter your age at all. But I actually just created one of these systems or processes for myself in my podcasting business. I've been using Claude Cowork for a little while now. Right. And what I realized in setting up all of these upcoming podcasts is that I follow the same system of putting reminders in my calendar for different parts of the process. And I was doing it manually every time for some reason until I realized, I wonder if Claude can do this for me. And sure enough, when I asked it, hey, I follow these certain steps every time I set up a new podcast recording. Is that something you can automatically schedule for me? And what do you need to know? And just having this conversation created a workflow that now if I type in a specific keyword, it will automatically ask me, okay, when's your podcast recording date? Who is the guest? When do you want to air it? And it will plop into my calendar all the reminders I need for my process every time. So I don't have to set up 7 different events for every podcast. So that's just my little example.
It's great. I mean, I'm working on my website right now. When I say working on it, I'm using Cowork to come up with the HTML that I want it to cut and paste into, the hosting system that I'm using. And it's something that probably would have taken me a week to figure out back in the day. I know if I locked in, I could probably get it done in less than a day using Claude Cowork. So it's just the potential there is so huge. And I mean, everybody and their mother is talking about AI, so I won't go on much further than that. But definitely figure out AI literacy.
So there is one question that I always end with for every guest, and it is this. If our listeners could walk away with only one message from today's conversation, what do you hope that is?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think that like starting over doesn't mean you failed. It means that you're finally like trusting yourself in the way that you've always needed to. I think starting over isn't a failure. It's just a redirection. And, in 100 years, is anyone going to care about the fact that you left corporate to take a bet on yourself? No. So we live on a rock hurtling through space. Just do it. At the risk of sounding like a Nike ad, just do it.
Bree, thank you for coming on here, for being this honest, for letting us peek behind the curtain on what it actually takes to do what you're doing. I will be sure to include in the show notes where listeners can find Noli Coffee, both in real life as well as on Instagram and TikTok. If you are listening and this conversation hits you in the feels, do me a favor. Share it with one person in your life who needs to hear that taking the leap is survivable. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. And if you are, please consider leaving a 5-star review. Those really help others find us, and they encourage me to keep on recording. If you are a Seattle area local, please drive up to the coffee stand, tell Bree I sent you, and try one of her drink experiments. Until next time, I'm Jen Fast, and this is The Comeback Show.